You've entered void of rules, where chaos reigns and darkness consumes all. In this twisted realm where all laws have crumbled, only one rule remains, and those who break it are cast into eternal digital oblivion. The rule is simple. Subscribe. We're almost at 5,000 corrupted souls, but the void hungers for more. Our goal is 10,000 subscribers before this year bleeds into darkness. Will you join our legion, or face the consequences of defying the void? Now let's jump into today's story. My name is Dorian Kael, and I am the last enforcer of heaven's will on earth. But I'm not the Grim Reaper you've imagined in your darkest nightmares. I don't ferry souls across rivers of shadow or count down the final heartbeats of dying mortals. My quarry is far more dangerous, far more personal. I hunt angels who have abandoned their sacred duty and chosen to feast on human suffering like parasites gorging themselves on an open wound. Tonight, I stand among the weathered headstones of Millbrook Cemetery, just outside Detroit. November wind cuts through my long black coat, carrying with it the scent of approaching winter, and something else, something that makes my skin crawl with recognition. Burnt feathers, the metallic taste of spilled divine blood, the ozone stench that lingers after celestial wings have been torn from their host. My scythe rests against a granite monument to some long-dead industrialist. This weapon isn't the curved farming tool that folklore depicts. It was forged in the heart of a dying star, blessed by archangels who no longer answer prayers, and tempered in the rips of martyrs. The blade gleams with its own internal light, silver white and cold as winter moonlight. The handle is wrapped in leather strips I cut from the first rogue angel I ever killed, a creature named Azrael, who had spent 3 centuries feeding on the nightmares of children. That was 400 years ago, and I still remember the sound her wings made when I tore them from her back. Like ripping silk that screamed, strapped across my shoulders is a leather satchel, black as midnight and heavy with the weight of divine judgment. Inside are dozens of severed angel wings, each pair a testament to justice served and corruption purged. They never stop moving in there, writhing, whispering, pleading to be reunited with bodies that have long since crumbled to dust. Sometimes in the deep hours of night when sleep eludes me, I can hear them singing lullabies in languages that predate human speech. The melodies are beautiful and terrible, filled with promises of redemption that will never come. The fog rolling between the headstones tonight is wrong, too thick, too cold, moving against the wind in patterns that suggest intelligence behind its movements. Something is hunting in my territory, and that something knows I'm coming for it. The very air tastes of anticipation, like the moment before lightning strikes. People believe angels are incorruptible, beings of pure light, servants of divine will, who can do no wrong. They're fools. When an angel falls, they don't plummet to hell in a cascade of fire and brimstone, like the old stories claim. Most of them land right here on Earth, blending into human society, while they slowly transform their gifts of mercy and healing into instruments of exquisite torture. That's where I come in. My eyes, once brown like any mortal's, now burn with golden fire, a mark of the authority heaven granted me centuries ago. Through them, I can see the truth that hides behind human faces. I can spot the faint glow of corrupted halos, the shimmer of wings folded into dimensions that shouldn't exist, the telltale signs of angels who have forgotten their purpose and chosen a darker path. I've been hunting for so long that I barely remember what I was before heaven called me to this service. A soldier, perhaps. A priest. A killer who found redemption in divine purpose. The details fade like old photographs left too long in sunlight, but the mission remains crystal clear. Find the rogues, drag them out of hiding, and rip their wings from their backs so they can never again poison heaven's name with their presence, but tonight feels different. The weight of the wing satchel seems heavier than usual, and the whispers from inside have taken on an urgent, almost desperate quality. They speak of silence from above, of commands that no longer come, of a darkness spreading through the celestial realm itself, like cancer through a dying body. I ignore them, as I always do. I have work to do. The first disturbance appeared 3 weeks ago. Reports of patients at St. Augustine's Hospital experiencing impossible recoveries followed by relapses that defied medical explanation. A child with leukemia suddenly cancer-free, only to develop tumours that grew at supernatural speed. An elderly man's heart attack reversed mid-episode, his cardiac function restored to that of a 20-year-old, before his chest cavity filled with blood that burned like acid. A burn victim's skin healing overnight, only to catch fire from the inside out. These weren't miracles. They were a rogue angel playing with healing, like a child torturing insects. St. Augustine's Hospital squats like a diseased tumour against the Detroit skyline, its windows dark except for the occasional flicker of impossible light in the upper floors. The building has stood empty for 3 years, ever since a mysterious plague killed every patient in the cancer ward within 6 hours. The official story is equipment failure, a cascading system breakdown that somehow caused every life support machine to malfunction simultaneously. But I know the truth. I can smell the lingering traces of corrupted healing magic in the air, taste the bitter residue of mercy transformed into malice. The parking lot is cracked and overgrown, with weeds that seem to move when you're not looking directly at them. A rusted ambulance sits abandoned near the emergency entrance, its back doors hanging open like a screaming mouth. The vehicle's interior is stained with something that might have been blood once, but has turned the colour of burnt copper and gives off a smell like rotting flowers. I enter through a service door that should have been locked, but swings open at my touch. The hospital's automated systems died with its patients, leaving behind a maze of darkened corridors that stretch like the intestines of some vast dead beast. My boots echo on cracked linoleum that was once white but has faded to the colour of old bones. Emergency lighting flickers overhead, casting dancing shadows that suggest movement where there should be none. The smell hits me as I reach the first nurse's station. The cloying sweetness of flowers left too long in stagnant water, mixed with the copper tang of blood and something else, something that makes my stomach clench with revulsion. Fear. Concentrated, distilled terror so pure it has become a physical presence in the air, thick enough to taste. Wheelchair tracks loop endlessly around the station, in patterns that make no geometric sense. The rubber is left black marks on the floor, spiralling inward like a nautilus shell, or outward like ripples on a pond. Following them would drive a mortal mind to madness, but I've seen worse things than impossible geometry. Still, I keep my eyes focused ahead as I move deeper into the hospital's belly. The elevator shaft is filled with something that isn't quite fog, and isn't quite light. When I shine my scythe's glows into the opening, shadows flee upward like startled birds, carrying with them the echoes of screams that happened years ago. I take the stairs instead, my footsteps ringing metallically in the confined space. The pediatric ward is on the 3rd floor, and that's where the true horror begins. Children's drawings still cling to the walls, with yellowed tape, crayon masterpieces of families and sunshine and birthday parties. But every face in every picture has been scratched out with such violence that the paper is torn, leaving ragged holes where smiling eyes and laughing mouths should be. The scratches don't look random, they're too precise, too deliberate. Someone spent hours here, methodically, destroying every representation of joy, every symbol of innocent happiness. In the playroom, toys lie scattered across the floor, in formations that resemble ritual circles. Teddy bears arranged in pentagram patterns, their button eyes removed and replaced with tiny mirrors that reflect nothing. Building blocks stacked into impossible towers that seem to extend beyond the ceiling despite being clearly finite in height. A rocking horse that moves slowly, back and forth despite having no one to push it. Its painted smile stretched wide enough to reveal wooden teeth, filed to points. Ward B7 is where I find my first real clue. Room 347 holds a child's bed, with restraints still attached to the railings. The leather straps are worn smooth from struggle, stained with something that might once have been tears, but has crystallized into tiny, perfect gems. When I pick one up, it dissolves on my skin like salt, and for just a moment I experience a flash of pure, distilled agony. The last moments of a child who died screaming for parents who would never come, whose final breath was stolen and transformed into jewelry for a monster's amusement. That's when I hear the singing. It drifts through the ventilation system like smoke, a lullaby sung in a voice that was once beautiful but has been corrupted by centuries of misuse. The melody is familiar, "Hush, little baby," but the lyrics have been changed into something obscene, a promise of pain instead of comfort. The words speak of needles that never stop piercing, of medicine that burns like fire, of healing that hurts more than the original wound. I follow the sound deeper into the hospital, past operating rooms where the tables are still set for procedures that will never be completed. In OR6, someone has arranged surgical instruments into patterns that resemble wings. Scalpels and bone saws form primary feathers, while smaller tools create the delicate, secondary plumage. It's beautiful in its precision and horrifying in its implications. A monument to healing, perverted into art, compassion transformed into decoration. The intensive care unit is where I finally find him. Raphael sits in the center of the ward, like a spider in its web, his 6 wings spread wide behind him in a display of corrupted majesty. Once, those wings were pure white, soft as new snow and bright as starlight. Now they're mottled with grey and black, rotting from the tips inward like frostbitten flesh. Patches of feathers have fallen out completely, leaving bare skin that weeps a substance too thick to be blood, too dark to be anything natural. His halo has transformed into a crown of thorns that drips acidic tears down his face, leaving tracks like acid burns on skin that was once flawless. His eyes are completely white, the pupils burned away by centuries of staring directly into human suffering. When he smiles at me, his teeth are perfect porcelain, but they've been filed to points sharp enough to draw blood from a whisper. "Dorian Kael," he says without turning around. His voice carries the echo of 1,000 dying patients, each word layered with the final gasps of terminal cancer victims and the gurgling breath of drowning children. "I wondered when you would find me. I've been keeping them alive, you know. All of them, for months, years. Just long enough to savor every exquisite moment of their pain." The beds around him should be empty, but they're not. Transparent figures writhe under thin sheets, their forms shifting between the patients they once were and the agony they've become. A woman with cancer eating through her bones like acid, her skeleton visible through flesh that has become glass. A child whose body is 90% burn scars, flames still dancing across his skin like living tattoos. An old man whose heart stops and starts in an endless rhythm of near death, each false beat bringing fresh waves of panic and despair. But there are others too, patients I recognize from news reports over the past 3 years. A construction worker who should have died in a fall, but lived long enough to experience every bone in his body breaking individually. A mother who survived a car crash only to feel her internal organs rupture one by one over the course of weeks. A teenager who recovered from meningitis just so she could experience her brain slowly dissolving from the inside out. "Let them go," I command, raising my scythe. The blade begins to glow brighter, responding to the presence of corrupted divinity. Raphael finally turns to face me, and I see what he's truly become. His healing touch, once used to mend broken bones and cure diseases, has been perverted into something monstrous. Where he places his hands, flesh doesn't heal properly. It grows in twisted spirals, bones set at impossible angles. Organs rearrange themselves into configurations that maximize suffering while maintaining life. He's been using his patients as canvases, painting masterpieces of agony on living flesh. "I can't let them go," he whispers, and for just a moment I hear something like regret in his voice. "I need them. Heaven doesn't send us sustenance anymore. Did you know that? The light has gone out. The golden cord that connected us to the divine realm has been severed. We have to find our own nourishment and pain. Pain is so much richer than joy, so much more complex, more nutritious for starving celestial beings." He stands slowly, his movements accompanied by the sound of breaking glass and ripping silk. His wings spread wider, revealing the true extent of his corruption. Each feather is a tiny work of art, a crystallized scream, a fossilized tear, a preserved moment of absolute despair. They catch the light from my scythe and refract it into rainbows of anguish, each color representing a different type of suffering he's collected. "You don't understand what it's like," he continues, taking a step toward me. "To be cut off from the source of everything that made you whole. To feel yourself slowly dying by degrees, your essence fading like smoke in wind. We weren't meant to survive without divine sustenance, Dorian. We're like flowers trying to bloom in eternal darkness." He lunges at me with speed that defies physics, his corrupted healing touch becoming a weapon more terrible than any blade. Where his fingers graze my left arm, the flesh immediately begins to heal incorrectly. Muscle fibers grow in knots that pull my bones out of alignment. Blood vessels reroute themselves through patterns that create constant excruciating pressure. The pain is beyond description, not just physical agony, but the deeper horror of feeling your own body betray itself. Healing becoming a form of torture more refined than any medieval device. My scythe cuts through his divine flesh like warm butter, but each strike releases the accumulated screams of his victims. The sound bounces off the hospital walls, amplified and twisted until it becomes a symphony of suffering that threatens to drive me mad. Raphael fights back by channeling his patient's agony into his attacks, making every blow carry the weight of terminal illness and surgical trauma. We crash through 3 floors of the hospital, our battle destroying everything in its path. Medical equipment explodes into sparks and flame when touched by corrupted angel blood. An oxygen tank ruptures when Raphael's wing clips it, filling the air with blue fire that burns cold instead of hot, freezing the moisture in our lungs until each breath feels like swallowing razor blades. The sprinkler system activates, but instead of water, it rains the crystallized tears of his phantom patients, tiny diamonds of despair that cut like glass when they strike exposed skin. In the hospital's basement morgue, surrounded by empty drawers that should hold bodies but instead contain only shadows shaped like human forms. I finally managed to pin Raphael against the wall of stainless steel, his wings spread wide on either side of him, each one a masterpiece of corruption and decay. Up close I can see that the grey patches aren't rot at all. They're tiny faces, the visages of every patient he's tortured, embedded in his feathers like living tattoos. They mouth silent screams, their eyes following my movements with desperate hope. "You don't understand," he gasps, white eyes staring at nothing and everything. "We're starving, all of us. Heaven has gone silent and we're dying by degrees. What would you have us do? Fade away like forgotten prayers? Dissolve into nothing like morning mist?" I grab his first wing at the joint where it connects to his shoulder blade. The feathers feel like snow that never melts, cold and somehow wet despite being completely dry. When I rip it away, the sound is like ripping silk mixed with breaking violin strings, but underneath it I hear something else, the collective sigh of relief from every face embedded in the feathers as they finally find release. The second wing comes away easier, bringing with it a shower of those embedded faces that dissolve into mist before hitting the floor. Each dissolution releases a whispered "thank you" that echoes through the morgue like a prayer finally answered. The third wing crumbles to ash in my hands, releasing the screams of burn victims into the air where they hang like smoke before dispersing. The fourth wing bleeds light instead of blood, golden radiance that immediately turns black as it touches the corrupted air. By the time I've removed all 6 wings, Raphael has stopped moving entirely. What's left behind looks almost human, if you ignore the holes where his wings used to be, and the crown of thorns still weeping acid down his face. His final words are barely audible. The silence. It's been so long since heaven spoke. The phantom patients fade from their beds with expressions of relief, so profound it makes my chest ache. For the first time in decades, they're free to die properly, to move on to whatever waits beyond the veil. I collect what remains of Raphael's wings, mostly black ash and fragments of crystallized tears, and add them to my satchel. The other wings inside whisper excitedly, welcoming their new companions to the darkness. As I leave St. Augustine's Hospital, the building seems to sigh, settling into itself like an old man finally allowed to rest. But I notice something troubling in the pocket of my coat. My divine communication device, a small crystal that should glow with heavenly light, remains dark and cold. I haven't received new orders in weeks, maybe months. Time has become fluid in my immortal existence, days blending into nights without the structure of divine purpose to give them meaning. The whispers from my satchel grow louder as I walk through the Detroit streets, past abandoned buildings and broken streetlights that flicker like dying stars. Heaven is silent, they murmur in harmony. Heaven has forgotten us all. My second hunt takes me to Gettysburg, where something has been feeding on the psychic residue of America's bloodiest battlefield for over a century. The reports started coming in 3 months ago. Park rangers quitting after experiencing phantom battles that raged every night. Tourists leaving the historic site traumatized by visions of their own deaths in conflicts they never fought. But it's worse than just visions. Visitors to the battlefield have been experiencing physical manifestations of historical trauma. A middle-aged accountant from Ohio spent 3 days in the hospital after his body developed wounds consistent with a Civil War artillery blast, shrapnel scars, powder burns, internal bleeding from concussive force. A teenage girl on a school trip began speaking fluent German and pleading for her life in a trench that didn't exist, her hands developing frostbite despite the warm September weather. The battlefield itself has changed. Grass grows in patterns that suggest formations of fallen men, specific regiments frozen in their final moments. Trees lean away from certain spots, as if avoiding invisible wounds in the earth. Even the air tastes different here, thick with the weight of accumulated trauma and something else, a hunger that gnaws at the edges of perception, always present but never quite definable. I arrive on a Friday evening as November fog rolls across the battlefield, like the breath of dead soldiers. The mist carries impossible scents, gunpowder from muskets that fired 150 years ago, the copper tang of blood that soaked into soil and never fully washed away, the acrid smoke of burning flesh from artillery strikes that echo across time itself. The visitor centre closed hours ago, but I can see lights moving in the distance. Not electric illumination, but the muzzle flashes of weapons that shouldn't exist. The gleam of bayonets catching moonlight in a battle that ended before my grandmother was born. The sounds are even worse than the sights. The crack of rifles, the boom of cannons, the screams of horses and men dying in ways that history books sanitize into acceptable statistics. I don't have to search for long. The angel responsible reveals himself before I can even begin tracking him properly. Uriel, former angel of God's wrath, materializes near the Virginia Memorial as the sun sets behind him. He stands 12 feet tall, his massive frame draped in a uniform that shifts between different American military conflicts depending on the angle from which you view it. Continental Army blue becomes Civil War grey, becomes World War II. Olive drab becomes desert camouflage, all existing simultaneously in a way that makes the eyes water to follow. His wings are monuments to warfare itself. Each one stretches 20 feet from base to tip, constructed not of feathers, but of weapons. Musket balls form the primary structure, while bayonet tips create the sharp edges. Pieces of shrapnel from conflicts that haven't happened yet fill in the gaps, and the whole assembly moves with the terrible beauty of a sword being drawn from its sheath. When light catches the metallic surfaces, they reflect not the present moment but scenes of battle, charging cavalry, artillery barrages, men dying in mud that turns red with their sacrifice. "Welcome to my eternal battlefield," Uriel booms, his voice carrying across the misty field, like cannon fire. The sound doesn't just reach my ears, it reverberates through my bones, my teeth, the very marrow of my being. I've been feeding tourists the true experience of war for decades now. Every death, every moment of terror, every final thought of a dying soldier, I preserve it all, make it fresh again for new audiences. The fear is exquisite. As he speaks, phantom soldiers begin emerging from the fog, like memories made manifest. Continental Army regulars march alongside Civil War infantry, their feet making no sound on the grass but leaving behind bloody footprints that steam in the cold air. World War II paratroopers advance with M1 Guerns, while Vietnam grunts carry M16s, and behind them come soldiers from conflicts that exist only in nightmare, future wars fought with weapons that turn bones to powder and blood to steam. The phantom armies number in the thousands, representatives of every American military conflict, from the Revolution to wars that haven't been fought yet. They move with the terrible precision of the eternally damned, their eyes hollow but their weapons gleaming. Some bear wounds that killed them, gaping chest cavities, missing limbs, faces destroyed by shrapnel, but they continue to march, continue to fight, continue to die over and over again for Uriel's amusement. You're harvesting their trauma, I realise, watching a tourist family flee in panic as Revolutionary War ghosts surround their car. The phantoms don't touch the living, but their presence is enough to send the father into convulsions as he experiences a bayonet through the stomach, the mother screaming as musket balls rip through her ethereal form, the children weeping as they feel themselves dying in conflicts they've never heard of. Harvesting the truth of violence, Uriel corrects, his uniform shifting to Revolutionary War Continental as he speaks. Every human conflict leaves scars on reality itself. Most people can't see them, but they're there, wounds in the fabric of existence that bleed pain and terror across decades. I simply make them visible, help people understand what war really means, what sacrifice truly costs. His eyes burn with the light of artillery fire, and when he gestures, the phantom armies respond like extensions of his will. A regiment of Civil War Union soldiers fires a volley that passes through my body but carries with it the dying thoughts of actual men. Letters they'll never send home, prayers they'll never finish, names they'll never speak again. The battlefield feeds me, Uriel continues, spreading his weapon wings wider. Every visitor who experiences these visions, every tourist who feels the reality of war, instead of just reading sanitized accounts, their terror nourishes me. Their understanding of true violence sustains me. Without heaven's light, we must find other sources of sustenance. The phantom armies charge at me from all directions, weapons from across American military history, focused on a single target. A Revolutionary War musket ball passes through my chest, but carries with it the dying thoughts of the Continental soldier who fired it. Confusion, pain, a desperate prayer to see his family one more time. A Civil War artillery shell explodes near my feet, showering me with spectral shrapnel that cuts not flesh but memory, each fragment containing the final moments of a different battlefield casualty. The attack is overwhelming in its scope and variety. I experienced death in a dozen different time periods simultaneously. A bayonet through the stomach at Yorktown, a sniper's bullet through the lung at Gettysburg, the slow burn of mustard gas in a French trench, the flash burn of atomic fire over Nagasaki. Each death is unique, personal, carrying with it the full weight of a life cut short by human violence. But the phantoms aren't just attacking me, they're reliving their own deaths, forced to experience their final moments over and over again, in an endless loop of trauma. I see the recognition in their eyes, the desperate plea for release from this eternal battlefield, where nothing ever ends, where victory and defeat are meaningless concepts and only suffering remains constant. I've learned something over my centuries of hunting corrupted angels. Those who feed on human emotion become dependent on it, addicted to the very suffering they create. That dependency is also their weakness. Cut off the supply of pain and they begin to starve. I channel the battlefield's own accumulated pain into my scythe, drawing on every death, every moment of terror that has ever occurred on this ground. The weapon begins to glow with a dark light that isn't divine but something deeper. The concentrated anguish of a century and a half of American warfare, distilled into its purest form. But instead of attacking Uriel directly, I turn my weapon on his phantom armies. When my scythe cuts through the first spectral soldier, he doesn't scream or dissolve. Instead, he looks at me with gratitude so profound it makes my chest ache, mouths a silent "thank you," and fades away like morning mist. His relief is infectious, spreading to the phantoms around him like a wave of liberation. "No!" Uriel roars, realizing what I'm doing. "They're mine. Their pain sustains me." I continue cutting through the phantom ranks, each strike freeing another trapped soul from its eternal reenactment of death. Revolutionary War privates, Civil War corporals, World War I doughboys, Vietnam tunnel rats, all finally free to rest, their duty complete, their sacrifice acknowledged not as entertainment but as the genuine tragedy it was. With each freed soul, Uriel grows weaker. His massive form begins to shrink, his shifting uniform settling into simple white robes stained with blood from conflicts across time. His weapon wings start to crumble, musket balls and bayonet tips falling to the grass like metallic rain. "You don't understand," he gasps as I approach. "The silence from above. It's deafening. Do you know what it's like to serve for millennia and then suddenly hear nothing? No orders, no guidance, no acknowledgement that you even exist. We were forced to find our own sustenance, our own purpose." I grab his first wing, feeling the weight of centuries of warfare in my hands. When I rip it away, the sound is like a cannon shot mixed with the last breath of a dying soldier. The weapons that formed his wing scatter across the battlefield, each one releasing the soul it had trapped. Not just human soldiers, but the horses they rode, the dogs that accompanied them, even the pigeons that carried their final messages home. The second wing comes apart like a collapsing armory, revealing weapons from wars that haven't happened yet. Energy rifles that fire condensed starlight, bioweapons that remake their victims at the cellular level, reality-warping devices that turn battlefields into abstract art painted in blood and screaming. Each future weapon carries the potential deaths of millions. conflicts that Uriel has been preparing for, feeding on the fear of wars not yet fought. By the time I've removed all of his wings, Uriel has collapsed to his knees in the churned mud. His final words are barely audible above the wind. The last war, coming soon, and no heaven to guide us through it. As his form fades into mist and memory, the phantom armies across the battlefield begin to dissolve as well. But they don't disappear with the desperate silence of the enslaved. They fade with the peaceful resignation of soldiers finally allowed to come home. Some even smile as they go, raising spectral hands in final salutes, before dissolving into light that rises towards stars that seem somehow brighter than they were moments before. I collect the fragments of Uriel's wings, pieces of future wars and echoes of past conflicts, and add them to my satchel. They feel different from Raphael's corrupted healing wings. These carry the weight of every conflict humanity has ever waged, every moment when one person decided another should die. The satchel grows so heavy I can barely lift it, and the whispers inside become a chorus of fallen soldiers, demanding to know why their sacrifices were turned into food for a starving angel. For the first time in over a century, Gettysburg grows quiet. The psychic wounds in the earth begin to heal. The grass straightens. The trees stop leaning away from invisible trauma. But as I walk away from the battlefield, something follows me. Not a phantom soldier or a piece of Uriel's corruption, but a question that burrows into my mind like shrapnel. When did I last receive orders from above? When did heaven last speak? The communication crystal in my pocket remains cold and dark, and the whispers from my satchel grow more insistent with each step. Ask yourself, they murmur in harmony, how long has it been since you served anything other than habit? My third hunt leads me deep into the Appalachian Mountains, following reports of a town that appears on no official maps but shows up in GPS systems, tourist guides and census records. Milfield, according to the road signs, though the population numbers keep changing depending on which sign you read. 3,847 residents, according to one marker, 2,156 according to another, 891 according to a third. The numbers drop as you drive deeper into the valley, as if the town is slowly disappearing, even as you approach it. The road leading to Milfield is wrong, in ways that have nothing to do with geography. It's too straight, cutting through mountains that should force it to curve. The asphalt is perfect black, without any of the cracks or repairs you'd expect from decades of weather. Mile markers count backward instead of forward, and occasionally you'll pass the same landmark twice despite driving in a straight line. The first thing you notice about Milfield is the churches. They outnumber houses 3 to 1, each one seemingly larger than the last, their spires reaching toward heaven like grasping fingers. Gothic cathedrals sit next to simple wooden chapels, which neighbour massive basilicas that look like they were transplanted from Vatican City. All of them bear the same name, Church of St. Gabriel the Merciful. The second thing you notice is the people. They move with the slow, careful precision of sleepwalkers, their faces carrying expressions of perfect serenity that never quite reach their eyes. Their skin has a waxy quality, like candles that have been burning too long, and when they smile, which they do constantly, their teeth are too white, too perfect, like porcelain veneers covering something rotten underneath. But it's the children that truly disturb me. They appear to be normal ages, 5, 10, 15, but their eyes hold decades of experience, centuries of accumulated knowledge that no child should possess. They speak in whispers about events that happened before they were born, draw pictures of places that don't exist, and play games that involve standing perfectly still for hours at a time. I arrive on a Sunday morning, following the sound of 7 different church bells ringing in perfect harmony, despite being spread across the entire town. The harmony is wrong, mathematically impossible. The bells are tuned to frequencies that shouldn't exist, creating overtones that resonate in the bones and make the inner ear ache with pressure. St. Gabriel's Cathedral dominates the town centre, a massive Gothic structure that seems to fold in on itself in ways that architecture shouldn't allow. Flying buttresses support nothing. Windows look out onto views that can't be seen from the outside, and the main doors open onto a sanctuary that's larger than the building that contains it. When you walk around the cathedral, it appears to have 7 sides despite clearly being rectangular from a distance. Inside, Gabriel preaches from 7 pulpits simultaneously. The angel appears as he was meant to be, beautiful beyond human comprehension, with wings like stained glass windows that filter divine light into rainbows of impossible colour. But the glass is wrong, filled with swirling darkness instead of radiance, and the light that passes through it carries whispers of despair and surrender. His face shifts between different ages and expressions, sometimes young and compassionate, sometimes ancient and terrible, sometimes something that isn't human at all. His 7 sermons blend together into a single message of worship and sacrifice, promising eternal life and perfect health in exchange for complete spiritual surrender. The congregation hangs on every word, their waxy faces turned upward in expressions of religious ecstasy that would be beautiful if not for the emptiness behind their eyes. Brothers and sisters, Gabriel's voice resonates from all 7 pulpits at once, each word carefully tuned to bypass rational thought and speak directly to the desperate parts of the human soul. I offer you what no earthly priest can provide: true immortality, freedom from pain, from loss, from the fear of death. All I ask in return is that you trust me completely. Give me your faith, your devotion, your very souls, and I will keep you safe forever. The congregation murmurs agreement in perfect unison, their voices blending into a sound like wind through empty houses. Children as young as 5 recite prayers in Latin they couldn't possibly understand, while elderly parishioners who should have died decades ago sit in the front pews, their ancient eyes reflecting nothing but hollow contentment. As I watch the service, I begin to notice details that make my skin crawl. The communion wine is too dark, too thick, moving like liquid that's partially alive. The communion wafers bear impressions that look like tiny faces screaming in silent agony. When congregation members receive communion, their eyes roll back briefly, and for just a moment their features shift, becoming sharper, more predatory, before returning to their waxy serenity. I slip out of the cathedral and begin exploring the town more thoroughly. What I find makes every hunt I've ever undertaken pale in comparison. The cemetery is empty, not abandoned, empty. Headstones stand in neat rows dating back over 2 centuries, but there are no bodies beneath them. When I press my ear to the earth, I hear nothing. No whispered prayers from the dead, no final words echoing across eternity. Just a hollow void that seems to extend infinitely downward, as if the graves are portals to absolute nothingness. The hospital is fully operational, with patients in every bed, but none of them are sick in any conventional sense. They lie motionless under white sheets, their eyes open but vacant, breathing in perfect rhythm, as if controlled by some external force. Their skin has the same waxy quality as the other townspeople, and when I check their charts, the admission dates span decades despite all of them appearing to be the same age as when they arrived. In the pediatric ward, I find children who claim to be 8 years old but have medical records going back 60 years. They draw pictures of angels with too many wings and too many teeth, signing their names in handwriting that hasn't changed in decades. When I ask one little girl how long she's been in the hospital, she tilts her head like a confused bird and says, "Since forever. Gabriel keeps us safe from the bad thing that's coming." "What bad thing?" I ask. The little girl's eyes suddenly become ancient, filled with knowledge that no child should possess. "The silence," she whispers. the nothing that ate the bright place. Gabriel says we're safe here, but sometimes I remember being scared, so very scared. The truth becomes clear as I investigate further. Gabriel isn't just feeding on his congregation's spiritual essence. He's been harvesting it like a farmer tends crops, preserving entire families across generations to maintain a sustainable food source. The residents of Milfield live far beyond natural lifespans because he won't let them die, but their souls slowly drain away until only empty shells remain, animated by borrowed divine energy and kept docile by constant false promises of salvation. The school is perhaps the most disturbing location. Children attend classes where they learn nothing new, simply repeating the same lessons year after year. Their notebooks contain identical entries dating back decades, the same math problems solved in the same handwriting, the same essays about devotion to Saint Gabriel written in voices that never change or mature. The teachers are as hollow as their students, leading discussions about literature they've read 1,000 times before, grading papers that always receive the same scores. In the principal's office, I find records that span over a century. The same children enrolled, year after year, their photographs never aging, even as the dates progress from 1924 to present day. Some files contain medical notes about spiritual maintenance procedures, regular sessions where Gabriel personally ensures their life force remains stable, their artificial immortality sustained through direct intervention. The town library holds the final piece of the puzzle. The books all tell the same story. Humanity's need for divine guidance, the dangers of questioning faith, the rewards that await those who surrender completely to heavenly authority. But the dates in these books are wrong. Events that happened decades ago are described as if they occurred yesterday. News articles report the same tragedies over and over, the same natural disasters, the same wars, as if time itself has become stuck in an endless loop. In the basement archives, I discover the real records, documentation of Gabriel's true activities over the past 80 years. Detailed logs of life force extraction, spiritual energy levels monitored like livestock health reports, breeding programs designed to maintain optimal soul quality across generations. The residents of Milfield aren't his congregation. They're his crop, carefully cultivated and sustainably harvested to keep him fed in a world where heaven no longer provides sustenance. The final confrontation takes place during evening service when all 7 churches hold simultaneous masses. I enter the cathedral through a side door, my scythe hidden beneath my coat, and take a seat in the back pew among the hollow-eyed congregation. Gabriel notices me immediately, of course. Angels always recognize each other, especially when one carries the scent of severed wings and divine justice. But he doesn't stop his sermon. Instead, he begins speaking directly to me, his words carrying across all 7 churches simultaneously. "We have a visitor tonight," he announces, his beautiful face turning toward me with a smile that would shame the sunrise. "A hunter, a collector of wings. Tell me, Dorian Kael, do you still believe in the mission heaven gave you? Do you still think you serve the greater good?" The congregation turns to stare at me with empty eyes, their movements perfectly synchronized. Children and adults, the young and the impossibly old, all focusing on me, with the blank intensity of dolls given life. Their unified attention creates a pressure in the air that makes breathing difficult, as if their collective gaze has physical weight. "You're killing them," I say, standing slowly, "draining them dry so you can play at being a god." Gabriel laughs, and the sound comes from all 7 pulpits at once, creating an echo that makes the cathedral's stone walls vibrate like struck tuning forks. "Killing them? I'm preserving them. Do you see any suffering here? Any pain or fear or loss? I've created paradise, Dorian. I've given them exactly what every human being claims to want. eternal life without consequences. "They're not alive," I reply, drawing my scythe. The blade's silver light cuts through the cathedral's false illumination, revealing the congregation for what they truly are. Empty vessels kept animate by stolen life force, puppets dancing to divine strings. They're batteries, livestock. You've turned human souls into a renewable resource. "And what are you?" Gabriel asks, rising from all 7 pulpits simultaneously. His stained glass wings spread wide, casting prismatic shadows across the congregation. "When did you last receive orders from above? When did heaven last acknowledge your existence? You're as abandoned as the rest of us, yet you still cling to a mission that no longer has meaning." His words hit like physical blows because they carry the weight of truth I've been trying to ignore. The communication crystal in my pocket has been dark for months. The whispers from my wing satchel tell the same story over and over. Heaven is silent. Heaven is forgotten. Heaven may no longer exist. "Perhaps," Gabriel continues, his 7 voices weaving together into a symphony of temptation, "you should join us, stop this futile hunting, and help me preserve what's left of divinity on Earth. Together we could—" "No." The word rips from my throat with more force than I intended. "Whatever you've become, whatever drove you to this perversion of mercy, you're still draining innocent people to fuel your own power. That makes you my enemy, regardless of any divine mandate." Gabriel's expression shifts, beautiful features becoming terrible as his true nature reveals itself. "So be it. But know this. When you destroy me, you'll be condemning these people to death. Without my intervention, they'll age decades in minutes. You'll be killing hundreds to satisfy your own sense of justice." "They're already dead," I reply, advancing towards the nearest pulpit. "You just haven't let them realize it yet." The battle that follows transcends physical space. Gabriel fights from within all 7 churches simultaneously, using each building as an extension of his body. Stained glass windows fire beams of coloured light that sear flesh and soul alike. Pews rearrange themselves into barriers and weapons, their wooden surfaces sprouting thorns that weep acidic sap. The massive pipe organs play hymns that cause physical pain, each note designed to shatter bone and rupture organs. But Gabriel's true weapon is his congregation. At his command, they rise from their seats and advance on me with the inexorable precision of sleepwalkers. Their touch doesn't burn or cut. It drains, pulling an energy directly from my divine essence to feed back into Gabriel's power. Individually, they're weak, but there are hundreds of them, and each contact leaves me slightly diminished. I respond by channeling the pain of his victims into my scythe, drawing on decades of slowly drained life force and spiritual agony. The weapon becomes a conduit for their suffering, blazing with dark fire that cuts through Gabriel's illusions and reveals the truth beneath his beautiful lies. We fight through all 7 churches simultaneously, our battle taking place in multiple locations at once, as reality bends around the conflict between divine and corrupted divine. In one church, I dodge pillars of crystallized prayer that explode into clouds of glass shards. In another, I leap between floating pews as Gabriel tries to crush me with the weight of false devotion. The congregation follows me from church to church, their hollow eyes reflecting nothing but programmed loyalty. But as my scythe's light touches them, some begin to remember. Brief flashes of awareness cross their faces, confusion, horror, desperate pleas for release. A middle-aged woman suddenly recalls her husband's funeral, realizes she should have died years ago. A teenage boy remembers his 18th birthday, then his 20th, then his 40th, all celebrated in the same body that never aged. The turning point comes when I realize that Gabriel's power is tied to his connection with the congregation. Every time one of his hollow-eyed followers speaks a prayer, he grows stronger. Every moment of false worship feeds directly into his ability to reshape reality around us. So I start destroying the connection points. Each church has an altar where Gabriel focuses his power, a nexus of stolen life force that keeps his control intact. But these aren't ordinary altars. They're living things, pulsing masses of crystallized souls that beat like hearts. When I touch my scythe to the first one, it screams in voices I recognize, the accumulated cries of every person Gabriel has drained over the decades. With each altar destroyed, Gabriel's sevenfold presence weakens. His beautiful form becomes more desperate, more obviously corrupted. The stained glass wings begin to crack like damaged windows, revealing the swirling darkness he's been hiding inside his beautiful shell. "You don't understand," he screams as his power wanes, his voice echoing from fewer and fewer pulpits. "Heaven abandoned us. The light went out and we were left to starve in the darkness. I did what I had to do to survive, to preserve something of what we used to be." By the time I reach the final altar, Gabriel has consolidated his presence in the main cathedral. His congregation sits motionless, finally released from his control but too empty to move or speak. Their eyes show the first signs of awareness they've had in decades, but it's the confused awareness of people waking from dreams they can't quite remember. The last altar is different from the others. Instead of crystallized souls, it contains something that makes my divine senses recoil in horror. A fragment of heaven itself, a piece of the celestial realm that Gabriel somehow managed to preserve when everything else collapsed. It pulses with weak golden light, barely alive, sustained by the constant sacrifice of human souls. "That's what's left," Gabriel whispers, his form now revealed as partially hollow, held together by desperate will and stolen energy. One tiny fragment of paradise kept alive by the only means available to us. Destroy it, and you'll erase the last evidence that heaven ever existed. I raise my scythe anyway. When the blade touches the altar, the fragment of heaven releases a sound like the last breath of God. Beautiful, terrible, final. The golden light flares once, bright enough to illuminate every shadow in the cathedral before dying forever. Gabriel screams as his connection to divinity finally severs completely. His stained glass wings don't dissolve like the others. They shatter, exploding into millions of colored fragments that rain down like a prayer broken into syllables. Each piece carries with it a small portion of stolen life force, streams of golden light that flow through the cathedral and back into the congregation. The effect is immediate and heartbreaking. The people of Milfield begin to age rapidly, decades of stolen time catching up with them in moments. But there's no pain in their faces as they finally die, only relief. The profound peace of souls finally allowed to move on after being trapped in artificial bodies for far too long. Gabriel's final form is pathetic, a broken figure with holes where his wings used to be, surrounded by the rainbow debris of his shattered beauty. "You've killed them all?" he whispers, his voice now weak and purely human. "No," I reply, gathering the fragments of his dissolved wings. "I set them free." The town of Milfield doesn't survive the night. Buildings collapse as the false energy holding them together dissipates. Roads crack and crumble. The impossible churches fold in on themselves like origami made of stone and glass. Within hours, there's nothing left but foundations and memories, another ghost town in the Appalachian Mountains where something beautiful once tried to hide something terrible. I add Gabriel's wing fragments to my satchel, but they're different from the others. Instead of whispering complaints or pleas, they sing, a wordless hymn of gratitude from souls finally allowed to rest. The sound is beautiful and heartbreaking, a reminder of what angels were meant to be before corruption claimed them. But as I drive away from the ruins of Milfield, the weight of revelation presses down on me like a physical force. 3 hunts, 3 angels feeding on human suffering, because they claim to be abandoned by heaven. 3 stories of corruption born from desperation, of divine beings slowly starving while continuing to serve a mission that may no longer have any meaning. The communication crystal in my pocket remains cold and dead. The whispers from my satchel grow more insistent. With each passing mile, their voices blending into a chorus of the abandoned. I stop at a roadside motel outside of Pittsburgh, needing time to think, to process what I've learned. The room is small and sterile, with thin walls that let in the sound of trucks on the interstate. I sit on the edge of the bed and pull out my communication crystal, holding it up to the fluorescent light. Nothing. No warmth, no divine presence, no sense of connection to anything beyond the physical realm. For the first time in 4 centuries, I'm truly alone with my thoughts, and those thoughts are dark indeed. That's when the wings in my satchel begin speaking in unison. Their voices blend together into a choir of the severed, telling me things I don't want to hear but can no longer ignore. They speak of months of silence from above, of commands that stopped coming, of a growing darkness in the celestial realm itself. They tell me about the last days of heaven, when even the archangels fell silent and the throne rooms emptied one by one. We weren't rebelling, they whisper in harmony, their words creating overtones that vibrate through my bones. We were dying, cut off from the source of everything that made us whole, slowly starving while you hunted us like criminals. We fed on human suffering because there was nothing else left, because heaven itself had gone dark. I try to deny their words, but the evidence is overwhelming. How long has it been since I received new orders? How many weeks have passed since my last direct communication with a celestial authority? When did my divine mandate become nothing more than habit, an automated response to a mission that may no longer have meaning? The wings continue their revelation, painting a picture of cosmic collapse that explains everything I've witnessed. They speak of a war beyond human comprehension, fought on planes of existence where thought becomes reality and reality becomes nightmare. They describe the slow consumption of heaven by something vast and hungry, something that devoured light itself and left only empty spaces where paradise used to be. The Creator didn't abandon us, they whisper. The Creator was destroyed, consumed by entities from dimensions where mathematics breaks down and logic becomes a deadly joke. We felt it happen, the moment when the divine presence simply stopped, like a candle being snuffed out, but the candle was the size of a universe. The crystal in my hands cracks down the middle, then shatters completely. Fragments of crystallized light fall to the motel room floor, each piece reflecting nothing but darkness. My last connection to whatever authority once guided me has been severed, leaving me truly orphaned in a cosmos that no longer contains the God who created me. Outside, thunder rolls across the Pennsylvania hills, and I realize that I'm about to face something far worse than a rogue angel. I'm about to discover the truth about my own purpose, my own abandonment, my own slow starvation in service to authorities who may no longer exist. But first, there's one more hunt waiting for me. The oldest, most powerful rogue angel of all, hidden in a place where human civilization first learned to reach toward heaven. My final hunt waits for me in the Sahara Desert, where the oldest monastery on earth holds secrets that predate Christianity itself. The monastery of St. Catherine sits like a wound in the desert, its ancient stone walls rising from sand that has been sacred since before humans learned to write. The structure predates Christ by millennia, built on a site that was holy when the pyramids were young and will remain sacred long after humanity has forgotten how to pray. Its walls are covered with murals that tell the history of divine intervention on earth. Angels appearing to prophets, miracles being performed, the gradual retreat of heavenly presence as humanity evolved beyond the need for direct divine guidance. But some of the paintings show events that haven't happened yet, futures where angels return not as saviors but as something else entirely. I arrive at sunset when the desert heat begins to fade and shadows stretch across the dunes like grasping fingers. The monastery appears abandoned, but I can sense a presence within its walls, something massive and ancient and tired beyond measure. The air around the building shimmers with residual divine energy, but it's weak, fading like the last embers of a fire that's been burning for millennia. Thaloriel, Angel of the Thrones, waits for me in the main sanctuary. He doesn't hide or flee like the others. Instead, he sits on a throne, carved from a single piece of meteorite, his hands folded in his lap, his bronze wings spread wide behind him, like burnished shields. He appears exactly as he was meant to be, terrible and beautiful beyond human comprehension, a being of such pure divine essence that looking at him should blind mortal eyes. But I'm not mortal anymore, haven't been for centuries. And what I see when I look at Thaloriel isn't divine perfection. It's exhaustion, soul-deep weariness that goes beyond physical fatigue into something spiritual, existential. This is what an angel looks like when he's been cut off from the source of his power for so long that he's forgotten what light feels like. Dorian Kael, he says as I enter the sanctuary. His voice is like distant thunder, like the sound continents make when they shift, but underneath it I hear something heartbreakingly human. Pain, loss, the kind of grief that comes from losing everything you've ever believed in. The last hunter, the final enforcer of laws written by authorities who no longer exist. I'm here to collect your wings, I say, raising my scythe, but even as the words leave my mouth, they taste like ash. Something about this encounter feels different, final, in a way that has nothing to do with completing another hunt. Thaloriel doesn't flinch at the sight of my weapon. He doesn't even acknowledge it. Instead, he studies me with eyes that hold the weight of millennia. And when he speaks, his words carry the authority of absolute truth. Do you know what happened to heaven, Dorian? Do you know why the light went out? I don't answer, but he continues anyway, his voice echoing off the ancient stone walls. There was a war, not the war your human scriptures describe, with Lucifer and his fallen legions. A different war, fought on planes of existence that mortal minds couldn't comprehend, even if they tried. Heaven didn't fall in a blaze of glory. It was consumed, devoured by something vast and hungry that came from the spaces between realities. The murals on the monastery walls begin to move as he speaks, showing scenes I've never witnessed, but somehow recognize. Celestial cities burning with cold fire that gives no light. Archangels fleeing through dimensional gates that close behind them forever. The Creator itself, whatever that truly was, dissolving into component energies that scatter across the universe like the death scream of a star. The entities that destroyed heaven, Thaloriel continues, his bronze wings catching the last rays of desert sunlight streaming through broken windows. They came from dimensions where our concept of existence is nothing more than a fleeting dream. They consumed not just the physical structures of paradise, but the very ideas that made it possible. Hope, faith, love, justice. They ate the foundations of reality itself and left behind voids that even nothingness fears to enter. My scythe wavers in my grip. The weight of his words, combined with months of growing doubt, threatens to shatter what's left of my certainty. You're lying. Heaven doesn't just die. It's eternal, perfect, unchanging. Is it? Thaloriel stands from his meteorite throne, his massive form casting shadows that seem to move independently of his body. When did you last receive orders from above? When did heaven last speak to you directly? When did you last feel the certainty of divine purpose flowing through your veins like liquid fire? The questions hit like physical blows because I know the answers. Months, maybe longer. The communication crystal in my pocket has been dark for so long, I've stopped checking it. The divine authority that once burned in my eyes has faded to barely a flicker. I've been running on momentum, on habit, on the desperate hope that my purpose still means something. Your mission was automated, Thaloriel says gently, and there's genuine compassion in his voice. The first kindness I've heard from any angel in decades. A final command issued by the last functioning heavenly authority before it too was consumed. You've been following orders from a god that no longer exists, enforcing laws for a heaven that has been dead for nearly a year. The satchel on my back suddenly feels impossibly heavy. All those wings, all those severed connections to a divine realm that may have been nothing but empty space for months. I've been carrying around the evidence of my own obsolescence, proof that everything I've dedicated my existence to has been a lie. The angels you hunted, Thaloriel continues, spreading his wings wider to reveal what he's been hiding. Raphael, Uriel, Gabriel, they were just trying to survive. They were in pain, cut off from the source of everything that made them whole. You ended their suffering, even if you didn't realize it. His bronze wings aren't just decorative, they're a prison. Trapped within each metallic feather are tiny sparks of light, the final remnants of divine essence he's been hoarding, like a miser counting coins. They flicker weakly, barely visible, dying by degrees as each moment passes. I've been keeping them alive, he explains, following my gaze. The last traces of what heaven used to be. But they're fading, and I don't have the strength to sustain them much longer. When they finally go out, there will be nothing left of the divine realm, except memories and empty promises. Why didn't you run? I ask, my voice barely a whisper. Why wait for me here? Thaloriel's bronze wings shiver, shedding metallic feathers that ring like funeral bells when they hit the stone floor. Because I wanted you to understand. Because I'm tired, Dorian, so very tired of carrying this burden alone. I've been the sole guardian of heaven's last light for almost a year now, watching it slowly die while I grew weaker and weaker. And you? I grip my scythe tighter, though I'm no longer sure why. Are you suffering too? More than you can imagine, he whispers, and for the first time I see tears on his face. Not the acidic weeping of corruption, but genuine grief. Every day, every hour, I feel the last sparks of divinity growing dimmer. I've been holding on to them out of duty, out of hope that somehow heaven could be restored. But I know better now. Some endings are final, and this is one of them. Our battle, when it finally comes, is unlike any of the others. We both know it's meaningless, just two remnants of a dead cosmology going through the motions of an obsolete conflict. Thaloriel doesn't fight to win. He fights to make me understand the futility of everything I've devoted my existence to. We clash among ancient columns carved with prayers in languages that predate human civilization. His bronze wings ring like funeral bells when my scythe strikes them, each impact releasing waves of energy that shake the monastery's foundations. But with every blow I land, I can see the relief in his eyes, the gratitude of a being who has been carrying an unbearable burden for far too long. The sparks of divine light trapped in his feathers begin to escape as we fight, floating through the air like dying fireflies before winking out one by one. Each extinguished spark represents something lost forever, a prayer that will never be answered, a miracle that will never be performed, a soul that will find no divine comfort in its final moments. When I finally manage to rip away his first wing, it doesn't scream or writhe like the others. It simply dissolves, releasing its imprisoned light in a cascade of golden motes that dance briefly in the desert air before fading into nothing. The second wing follows, then the third, each one carrying away another piece of what heaven used to be. Thaloriel collapses as the last wing separates from his body, his massive form suddenly looking fragile and small, without the bronze plumage to frame him. The meteorite throne cracks down the middle, split by the absence of the divine energy that had been sustaining it. "Thank you," he whispers as the light leaves his eyes. "Now we can all rest." The satchel on my back rips open, unable to contain the spiritual pressure of so many severed wings, suddenly freed from their prison. They pour out like a storm of black feathers and dying light, each one finally able to fade into whatever comes after existence. The voices that have whispered to me for months fall silent one by one, until I'm left in absolute quiet for the first time in centuries. I stand alone in the ruined monastery as the last evidence of heaven burns away around me. My scythe remains, but its celestial fire has dimmed to barely a spark. My golden eyes fade to ordinary brown. The divine authority that has defined my existence for 400 years simply ends. For the first time since my creation, I am truly alone. No mission from above, no purpose handed down by divine command, no role to play in the cosmic order. Just me, Dorian Kael, standing in an empty monastery with a weapon I no longer need, and memories of a war I fought for a cause that never existed. The silence is deafening, but as I walk toward the monastery's entrance, stepping over the dust that was once Thaloriel's bronze wings, something occurs to me. The angels I hunted were feeding on human suffering. Yes, but they weren't the only threats in this world. There are demons, spirits, creatures that prey on mortal fear and pain for reasons that have nothing to do with divine abandonment. Monsters that hurt people simply because they enjoy it. Entities that feed on suffering by choice rather than necessity. Maybe I don't need orders from heaven to decide what's worth protecting. I step out into the desert night, my scythe slung across my shoulder, my purpose no longer dictated by cosmic law, but by my own sense of what's right. The stars above seem dimmer now, as if the light of divinity itself has been extinguished, but they still provide enough illumination to show me the path ahead. Behind me, the monastery of St. Catherine crumbles to dust, its ancient stones finally succumbing to the weight of centuries without divine preservation. The murals depicting heaven's glory fade like watercolors in rain, leaving behind only blank walls that will soon be nothing but sand. I walk into the darkness, carrying with me the knowledge that everything I once believed in was built on a foundation of lies. Heaven is dead. The angels I hunted were victims, not criminals. My divine mission was nothing more than the automated response of a broken system, continuing long after its creators had ceased to exist. But I also carry something else, the choice to forge my own meaning from the ashes of false purpose. There are still monsters in this world, things that hurt innocent people for profit, for pleasure, for the simple joy of causing pain. They may not be rogue angels, but they're no less deserving of justice. And if heaven won't provide that justice anymore, then perhaps it's time for someone else to take up the burden. The scythe across my shoulder feels lighter now, no longer weighted down by divine mandate, but made purposeful by personal conviction. My eyes may no longer burn with golden fire, but they can still see suffering when it occurs. My authority may no longer flow from celestial decree, but it can derive from the simple decision to stand between the innocent and those who would harm them. I hunt angels who betray heaven, and I rip their wings from their backs. But heaven betrayed us all first, abandoning its servants to starve in the darkness, while continuing to demand their loyalty. The greatest betrayal was learning that everything I believed in had already died, before I even knew it was in danger. Now I hunt for myself, for the humans who still need protecting, for the simple idea that someone should stand against the darkness, even when there's no divine light to guide the way. It's not a sacred mission anymore. It's just the right thing to do. And in a world where heaven has gone silent forever, maybe that's enough. The desert stretches endlessly before me, vast and empty as the void where paradise used to be. But somewhere in that emptiness, new monsters are stirring, new threats are emerging, new innocents are crying out for help that will never come from above. They'll have to settle for help from below instead, from a former angel hunter who has finally learned the difference between divine justice and simple human decency, from someone who no longer serves heaven's will, but has decided to serve something better, his own. My name is Dorian Kael, and I am no longer the enforcer of heaven's will on earth. But I'm still a hunter, and there's still work to be done.